What's a boring hobby that's not boring at all?
I do counted cross-stitch. I'm not creative at all, but give me a coded pattern that creates a map. I always do maps, but you can make *way more intricate things than you think if you invest the time, and I'm all over that poo. It's how I quit smoking.
It keeps my brain engaged. I know someone who doesn't stitch thinks it is easy, but some patterns are a challenge and I enjoy that.
My husband does cross-stitch as well. He says that he approaches it mathematically and it just makes sense, whereas I look at it and my eyes swim. Congrats on quitting smoking, by the way.
I don't know if it counts as a hobby, but I love just going for walks. I live in a small city, and I walk the same route often, with various extensions. On my days off, I spend the whole day by myself, walking around the whole town and watching, listening to music, and thinking. When I spend time with friends, I take them on walks with me. I walk in the woods, in the streets, I get lost, I walk to get to where I want to go, I'm always effing walking. I love it. It relaxes me and makes me feel purposeful at the same time. I seriously recommend it to everyone. Just take a freak JNG walk today. Watch the sunset. Watch the people around you. Look at the trees, look at the sky, look at the light moving across the buildings, listen to your footsteps or your breathing or a song or a story. It's so good for you.
There's a guy in a nearby city that is famous for walking. He's the walking guy that people have been seeing everywhere for years and years. Might I recommend an idea for your walks? Tracking where you've walked and mapping it all out, and making it a point to walk every street, trail, path in your small city. It could add a cool dimension to your walks.
I would say 100% a hobby. I mean, you invest time and sometimes money into it, good shoes, weather appropriate clothing, etc., and you do receive rewards or benefits from it. Walking is deeply underrated IMO.
100% this is my jam. I live in London, which is a pretty big city, but there's so many small towns with nooks and crannies you can discover. Pre-COVID I worked in Richmond for 5 years and there were still hidden gems I stumbled upon every day. Then there's the parks, the fresh air, the sound of the birds, even on an overcast day there's a mood you can get absorbed in.
Gardening. You'd be surprised.
Nothing beats cooking with herbs you grew yourself.
I'm super excited this year. We bought our house almost 7 years ago and I've been on overnights ever since. Now that I'm finally on day shift, I'll be able to get out during daylight hours to start a garden.
Hand sewing. It's meditative and yet requires a lot of attention to detail and skill to do effectively. Meat, tiny stitches are so satisfying and take a lot of practice. Different applications of techniques requires a lot of technical know-how, and there's a lot of math AMD abstract thinking involved, especially in structured or highly tailored garments. I'm planning to start making a bodice for Ren Fair this weekend since as of right now it looks like we're set to get at least part of the season, and I already know my pattern is going to require a lot of adjusting. Because it's so many pieces, it's going to take some trial and error to reshape them. I hate that fibercraft, garment creation, etc. are considered soft arts. I'd love to see some engineering bro try to figure out how to draft a corset pattern. New challenge everyone. Make a corset or set of stays to your measurements from a Janet Arnold pattern in a video you found on YouTube.
Quilting and cross-stitch. A nice mug of coffee, a good audio book, and I'm all set to spend the day making pretty stuff to look at.
Crochet and cross-stitch for me. The audiobook and coffee are necessary for the complete benefit.
Geocaching. Started this when my then GF and I were dirt poor in college, and now we have logged about 1,700 caches in about a dozen different countries. Even just doing it near our home is awesome, because you get to see things you'd never see otherwise. Highly recommend.
Doing it on vacation or when you are in a new place is even better. When geocaching was first described to me, I thought it sounded like the dumbest thing ever. Someone hides something, then posts the GPS coordinates to find it. You use a GPS to go to the exact spot and find the cache. Easy right? Lame right? Go do it. You'll likely have fun. If you have kids, call it treasure hunting. Bring stuff to trade. Bring a pen.
I remember once in trees someone was like, "Hey guys, let's geocache with pot stuff. We can post directions and stuff." And everyone was like, "Are you out of your effing mind? So you want to leave illegal substances in public, and post where they are? In a public forum. That is likely frequented by law enforcement."
Jigsaw puzzles. And also birdwatching. Sometimes you see aerial combat taking place with these birds, especially crows against hawks.
I go in and out of the mood for puzzles. But they are an amazing fix for the times where I just need to do something but I have nothing really to do. Like I don't have physical energy, but my head is going to explode if I don't do something.
Woodworking with hand tools. I'm addicted and have bought 5 hand planes and can't stop.
I'm really into woodworking and I really love to use the few hand tools that I have, but I feel like I always end up having to use power tools for everything, so I was wondering, what do you make that you can do with only, or mostly, hand tools?
Knitting, actually. If you can do it right, it's actually fun. Note that you'll probably rage quit if you get it wrong.
I rage quit 3 times before it finally clicked. I was like, I will not be defeated by string and sticks. Children can do this. Now it's one of my favorite hobbies and I've made some beautiful pieces.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Now I can fix my mistakes easily, but when I started my grandma taught me and was the only one who could help me. I visit her about 4 times a year, so whenever I made a mistake it ruined at least the whole day and had to wait until I could see my grandma again.
I used to knit, but fixing mistakes was so frustrating with complex patterns that I switched to crochet, which is more forgiving.
Oh, that method with only one needle with a hook?
Birding. People love hiking and going outdoors, but as soon as you add in birds, suddenly it's seen as boring. Birds are so diverse and you'll never know everything there is to know.
I started casual birding last year cause I hike and photography, so it gives me something to shoot for. I feel like as soon as I started pointing out the local birds that aren't crows and starlings, my Facebook friends started to enjoy birding pictures of the colorful seldom seen birds. I got at least one other person looking at birds now.
Birding is real-life Pokemon Go. Got to list 'em all.
My 12-year-old son is super into birding. We've bought him so many books recently and we're planning a trip out to Vancouver Island in July just so he can see some new birds.
Falling down rabbit holes on Wikipedia.
May I interest you in Wikipedia speedrunning? Search that on YouTube.
That's a new one. I had a friend, once, that was able to bring any topic back to penguins. Especially when drunk.
Oh dear, I was looking for this comment. I had to restart my phone because my Wikipedia had too many articles opened at once and they were all taking up space.
Editing videos. A lot of my friends say it looks boring, but it's actually soothing and calming after a stressful day.
What is your method? Like, do you have your editing process mapped out?
No, I actually enjoy editing videos for my family, and sometimes for my YouTube channel, usually video games, haha.
I do this for a living. Telling stories for a living is actually a privilege and I keep reminding myself how lucky I am to have this career.
Growing algae. I sometimes grab some empty glass containers, ones that I cleaned and wanted to reuse. Fill it with water. Rainwater is the best. Put in a bit of soil or any organic matter. I have a good collection of algae jars and a big bucket. They don't need much maintenance and look cool too. It feels good when you see how you just recycled and produced oxygen for free. I mean, I'm at least not a waste of oxygen. Edit. I did not expect that many upvotes and replies. Thank you all. I've been answering stuff for 5 hours now.
How do I start this?
Find a place with good sunlight and temperature around 20 to 30 degrees Celsius, 68 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. I put them on the rooftop away from shade. The containers I used were just regular Nescafe jars. I just washed them a little bit. I filled them with tap water. Rainwater is better cause it doesn't contain chlorine I'm sure you'll find why in the replies. Put a handful of soil and maybe some pebbles for the algae to grow on. You can seed the jar with some algae that already grew somewhere else. I got mine from a pot that I was using to cook and feed my cat's chicken heads that was filled with rainwater after I lost them. That's weird, I know. Or you can use pebbles covered with moss. Now closing the lid will prevent the water from evaporating too quickly, but it may suffocate the algae. While keeping it open will do the opposite. You'll have to look that up to make sure. I noticed that after some time the algae will start getting brown. I'm not sure why, but I'm sure people at our planted tank will help.
Astronomy. Edit. I was in a hurry when I made this comment, so it was only one word, but since then it's had more than 1,000 upvotes and some nice responses, so maybe I should add a bit more. I got my first look through a telescope at 13 yo. My school had its own little observatory, and a few of us, mostly those specializing in physics or maths for a level, were in the astronomy club. What hooked me wasn't the stars, it was the planets. Even with quite a lot of light pollution, there was, for me, something magical about being able to look at the moon as if you were hovering just a short distance above its surface. And the planets all have their own charms. Jupiter is perhaps the most interesting, both in terms of the planet itself and in terms of its moons. I love checking that the moons are where they're meant to be. I think of them as a sort of clock. I know that I'm doing nothing more significant than checking the observations that others have made before me, and verifying what others have already calculated, but I feel that in some small way I'm helping to continue the validation of the great work of others. And like many others, I have my little patches of lunar geography that I watch pretty regularly, just in case anything has changed. I suppose it's not exciting, but it's interesting to see our neighbor as the light and shadows change.
You just sit and look at the sky. Yeah, sometimes. What else then? Use a telescope to see better, or binoculars if I'm mobile. To see other stars, bright stars, dim stars, star clusters, star patterns, star constellations, star asterisms, important stars, fields of stars, pre-star nebulas, post-star nebulas, galaxies of stars, planets, comets, satellites. Caught a -4.1 ISS pass last night. Venus brightness, sky of stars. I wish I knew more sooner. I thought I had no shot of seeing anything with my light pollution. I didn't realize it really does take 20 minutes to adapt to the darkness. Pupils dilate in a few moments, but your brain has to chemically enhance your eyes too. Edit below. You can pick up some things by naked eye after you see them through a lens. I'm in a big Bortle 7 suburb but can glance and catch Andromeda and the Orion Nebula without aid if I'm adapted, usually off-center though. I have plenty of time to keep looking up. The only thing I truly missed was the iridium flares. I learned about them, then forgot about them, then remembered them when I heard they finally lost predictability. Edit for a comment that I think was deleted. AOL keyword, rhodopsin. Your eyes rods keep getting rhodopsin, but light bleaches it. It takes 20 to 30 minutes for it to be replenished, so technically not your brain doping your eyes for darkness, it's a continuous process of replacing burned pigment. I am not a bio person, I'm just a space brain.
Crocheting. It can be relaxing, and you have something to wear. I've made a few pieces that won blue ribbons at the county fair. May not be much, but I was super proud of it.
Painting. You're constantly adapting to what the paint is doing, thinking, using your intuition, and you're a lot more active than you appear to be.
Rock collecting. People thinking it's dull until you realize I walked through the woods and waded by river banks to get some of mine. That's more adventure than most see these days.
They're minerals, Marie.
Crossword puzzles. Like, actually buying the books of nothing but crossword puzzles and working up to the New York Times Sunday puzzle.
I bought the book of 200 NY Times Sunday crossword puzzles at the start of the pandemic and I'm more than halfway through it. Figuring out the puzzle's theme halfway through is so satisfying. Edit. I'm so happy talking to people who also love crosswords. My late grandma was the one who got me into them when I was 12, a whopping 20 years ago. No one else in my family does them and they all think I'm a massive nerd. I am, and proud of it.
Making holes in wood and stuff.
Reminds me of the Calvin and Hobbes comic, http://cdn3.sbnation.com/imported_assets/1025893/john6_gif.gif.
Just making holes. With a drill. Is this a simplified, I work in construction?
No, this is boring.
Model railroading and/or train simulation.
I don't know if this qualifies as a hobby, but I love making Spotify playlists for super obscure themes, like the summer of 1997, or the feeling you get when you realize you are driving too fast and it's raining, or these would make a good soundtrack for a zombie movie. I'm currently working on a playlist of songs to play a stranded Victorian-era time traveler to get them up to speed on 21st century American musical culture. Edit. I'm very flattered by all the requests for a link, but I would rather not. My Spotify account is under my real name and face.
Birdwatching.
For real, I've started paying attention to my local crows and it's fascinating. Sometimes they do some acrobatic poo just for the hell of it, sometimes they just chill together and stare at the sky lol. Loads of chatter between them also.
Playing chess.
Bullet. Equal parts flow and rage.
If you don't know what you are doing, it's boring. If you know what you're doing, suddenly it's 4 a.m. 3 days from when you remember starting. Edit. I'd like to clarify to those posting their ratings and saying you're bad at it, you aren't the people I'm referring to when I say, don't know what you are doing. I'm referring to the people who are barely learning how each piece moves on the board. Of course, a friend to teach you helps a lot, but if you are going solo, and are a complete novice just learning the basics, it gets pretty boring pretty quickly.
I recommend the bomb cloud opening.
Cooking. It seems mundane for everyone. But imagine if you could make your own favorite dishes without spending a huge amount of cash into the fancy restaurant or any kind of restaurant. You might able spend your cash for the ingredients, but you can have your favorite meal for the next few days. Bonus, if you manage to cook a new dish properly, you might impress peoples around you, especially toward your so.
Language learning. It's slow, methodical, and can be frustrating at times, but that moment when you can form simple sentences without much effort is probably one of the most gratifying feelings I've ever felt.
Making spreadsheets. I love finding patterns in stuff.
Writing long essays about nothing. I will sit down and write paragraphs about bullpoo, and make it like a rant, and then delete them. Edit. People keep asking why I delete them. The process is, I write everything out, get it all out of my system, and then let it all go. It's not about writing well and going back and editing them and making them perfect. It's about writing about what I want and what I feel and letting it all go.
I do this, but it's just my Reddit comments that no one reads. Oops.
OMG, I've never related to something more in my life.
Reading. It's an adventure in your mind.
Any hobby that you genuinely enjoy will not be boring to you.
It's boring to others, I'm sure, he opined. Unbearably dreary to those disinclined. A tiresome and tedious trailway to tread. A humorless hobby. ... I love it, he said.
Learning. You have the internet where you can learn anything you wish in hundreds of enjoyable ways, and it's practically free. Gaining knowledge should feel awesome. It's a shame school does the opposite to most people.
Thank you for watching. We upload new videos every day, so be sure to come back for more fun. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video.